durante su primer año de administración lo que otras administraciones no habían logrado en 4. Tiene una gran creencia, que es lo que lo empuja y le da la energía sobre sus ciudadanos, los valores, sus metas, y trabajó incansablemente por el estado de Maryland. Martin y su esposa Katie, que es una juez de distrito, tienen 2 hijas, Grace and Tara, y 2 hijos, William and Jack, y son miembros de la iglesia St. Francis de Assisi, una iglesia católica. Martin, Governor O'Malley, thank you for being here in Análisis 630 Special Edition.
Hey, thank you, Kike. Thank you for reading that long biography. I've never heard it in Spanish before. Thank you.
I must say that it's very short, but it says a lot about your life. And I have learned a lot about you and your political and public servant career. And that's basically what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk some issues about Puerto Rico.
Great.
But I also believe that the people of Puerto Rico should learn and know more about you. And
thank you.
Since you are coming over here to the island, actually I believe it's the first one from the Democratic Party who is here campaigning and getting to know people. We appreciate that interest. So the way that we're going to handle the interview is that I will speak to you in English, and then I will translate, and then you answer to me and I translate, so that the people get a taste and a knowledge of which way we're going. So I appreciate that again.
So I'll keep short sentences.
Yes, please.
All right, I'll do my best.
Thank you, I appreciate that. De la manera que vamos a manejar esto es que yo le pregunto a él me contesta, yo hago la traducción. Así que vamos con la primera pregunta. In the year 2008, you endorsed and supported Hillary Clinton. Why the change now? Why are you going against the Clinton? En el año 2008, el gobernador O'Malley endosó y le dio su apoyo a Hillary Clinton. ¿Por qué el cambio ahora? ¿Por qué irse en contra de los Clintons? Go ahead.
Because having traveled around the country now, especially the last couple of years, I have become convinced that the people of our country want new leadership, and they believe that only with new leadership will we be able to build again an economy that works for all of us instead of just a few of us.
Me dice que en sus viajes a través de los Estados Unidos, la gente le ha comunicado el interés que tienen de nuevo liderazgo, y que él entiende que él ofrece ese nuevo liderazgo para los Estados Unidos. And then, on the other hand, you're the first presidential candidate from the Democratic Party to come to Puerto Rico. And I'll say this, but Puerto Rico is basically known as Clinton Town. You're coming right here in the midst of the support that Hillary has had here and Bill for many, many years. What brings you to that?
Well, I think you could probably, in Democratic, in some circles throughout the United States, you might say the same thing. The Clintons, former President Clinton, former Secretary Clinton, are the most prolific fundraising couple, perhaps in the history of representative democracy, and they're also very good political organizers. So I'm coming to Puerto Rico because I'm running for president, and Puerto Rico sends delegates to the National Convention. And I also wanted to highlight a couple of the issues that I think are important to our country as well as to the people of Puerto Rico.
Le preguntó al gobernador O'Malley que por qué escoge a Puerto Rico ser el primer precandidato demócrata en venir aquí, específicamente cuando Puerto Rico pues se conoce como si fuera el pueblo de los Clinton, no solamente de Hillary, pero de Bill Clinton. Él me dice que también alrededor de los Estados Unidos hay muchos sitios que se conocen como parte de los Clinton, y que también reconoce que los Clinton levantan una cantidad de dinero enorme, pero él entiende cuál es el reto y que también vino a Puerto Rico porque quiere hablarle a los puertorriqueños sobre una serie de temas que no solamente son importantes para los puertorriqueños, pero también para los Estados Unidos. You are a supporter of Chapter 9.
I sure am.
Why is that?
Because I believe that the people of Puerto Rico should have the same protections as Americans on the mainland have when it comes to restructuring the sort of crippling debt that you find yourselves under on this island. And so I'm highlighting not only that in this visit, but also the need to treat the people of Puerto Rico fairly when it comes to Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements. It's not like you pay lower taxes, so why shouldn't the people of Puerto Rico get the same fair reimbursement rates? And I think both of those things would help your governor actually manage this debt crisis. He's a very effective governor and well regarded among certainly the Democratic governors, but he's not a magician. He needs help in battling these wolves away from the door.
Who are the wolves?
I think the wolves are the bondholders who feel like they have Puerto Rico over the barrel because during the Reagan administration, the people of Puerto Rico lost the same Chapter 9 protection that all the other states still have and that Puerto Rico once had. So that's why I believe the President, Secretary of Treasury need to stand up and say to the institutional bondholders on Wall Street that your short-term big return is not worth cratering Puerto Rico and Americans who live on that island.
You believe they have not done enough? I'm talking about the President and Secretary of the Treasury.
Yes, I believe that they have not done enough. I believe there's still the opportunity to do more. And I believe that if the people with whom Governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla is negotiating with knew that the President had his back and that the Secretary of Treasury were truly committed to this, that they would be more flexible in these negotiations. I don't think they believe that yet.
Why do you think that they have not done enough? I mean, they have shown more interest in what is happening in Cuba, and there's probably about 10 U.S. citizens living in there versus what is happening in Puerto Rico with 3.5 million U.S. citizens living in here. Why is that disparity?
I think there's so many changes that are now going on in this world of ours that sometimes it overwhelms the bandwidth of the way our foreign policy and all policy, domestic policy, have been conducted in the White House. So I don't exactly know. What I do know is this, that in running for the Democratic Party's nomination, I had the ability to elevate important issues on the radar screen of our national consciousness. And one of them is the plight of our neighbors in Puerto Rico, which if we don't pay more attention will hurt our credibility in this hemisphere, which would be very bad for all of us as Americans and the prosperity of the United States.
What would you do as President of the United States for the people of Puerto Rico if you were elected?
What I would do not only for the people of Puerto Rico, but also for the people of Detroit, the people of Baltimore, and people throughout the United States who are being left behind by this recovery, is to make the investments and the better choices that allow us to create an economy where wherever you start, through your hard work, you're able to get ahead again. The good news is that thanks to President Obama's leadership and a lot of tough choices, our country is now creating more jobs every month than we lose. But the bad news is 70% of us are earning the same or less than we did 12 years ago. And for the poorest people, poorest Americans, they've actually taken a step or two back, which is why you see unemployment higher in Baltimore, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York than it was 8 years ago. So we still have work to do in order to make our economy work again, to make the American dream a real promise instead of a lie, which is how too many American families of the most humblest means are starting to see it.
Would you, as President of the United States, recommend a financial rescue to Puerto Rico?
I would not call it necessarily a rescue. I would call it a restructuring of debt. I think it is as a rule, 9 out of 10 times, as a rule, any state, any county, any municipality that incurs debt should be required to repay that debt. But part of what it takes to be thinking and caring is to understand that in some situations a restructuring of that debt will do a lot more. It would do a lot less damage than insisting that the debt be immediately repaid. This should be a situation that's far more manageable than others that we've seen in other parts of the world. And I believe that if the President and the Secretary of Treasury and the Secretary of Health and Human Services step up and support Governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla in this effort, I believe he can get a sensible restructuring, and that would be in the best interest of our common good as a nation, as well as to the economy of the island of Puerto Rico.
When you mentioned that some cities and some states in the United States have been left behind on the economic growth in the United States, you mentioned Baltimore and as well as other cities in the United States. Were you ever in the position to choose or select, while being a two-term mayor and a two-term governor, to pay bonds or not to pay bonds?
We maintained a AAA bond rating all the way through the recession. I certainly had to make a lot of tough decisions to retire a big deficit in Maryland terms that I was left by my predecessor. I was left a $1.7 billion deficit. We also had to restructure pensions, and that was not easy. The employer, state, had to pay more. We had to require employees to pay more in order to defend our and sustain our defined benefit pension system. But those are all part of the tough decisions that you need to make in order to be fiscally responsible. And so I did do that as governor. I did do that as mayor. And at the same time, though, the sort of things we need to do to address structural unemployment in our nation are not the sort of things that any one governor or any one mayor can do by him or herself. It requires a national strategy. Invest in our cities again, invest in mass transit, invest in our infrastructure, invest in making college more affordable instead of more expensive. These are the things we used to do as Democrats and Republicans in every generation, as well as making sure we always kept the minimum wage above the poverty line. And we need to return to our true selves. Remember that our economy is not money, it's people. It's all of our people.
You're supporting an increase on the minimum wage, is that correct?
I sure have. I think we should raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour wherever and however we can. In my own state, at the state level, we were only able to get it up to $10.10 an hour by the time I left office. But in that process, we were able to forge a consensus whereby two of our counties raised, or more populous counties, raised their minimum wage to $12.80. It's a very interesting part of this whole economic conversation that we're now starting to have. For the better part of 40 years, we followed a trickle-down theory of economics. Remove regulation wherever you can, concentrate wealth at the top, and keep wages low so we can somehow be more competitive. But if you have a consumer-driven economy, you can't expect the sort of robust growth that lifts all boats if 70% of your people are earning the same or less than they were 12 years ago. So I think what we're seeing now is city after city, Los Angeles, Seattle, and other metro areas, raise their minimum wage, is a return to the truth and the realization that the more workers earn, the more money they'll have to spend, the better customers businesses will have, and the more our economy will grow. And I think that's the model that over time has played out and has made us the land of opportunity.
There are some people, including in the Obama administration, who have said that part of the damage that has been done to Puerto Rico's economy is that we have the federal minimum wage. And some of them have even gone as far as saying that we need to lower that. In my opinion, it would be a disaster. But it would also, I don't think that this economy will hold a $15 minimum wage.
Well, and some economies won't, and some rural areas won't. I mean, in our state, we also passed a living wage, and we did that on 2 tiers. So our more metropolitan economies with a higher cost of living and a higher cost of, a higher cost of living, we had a higher living wage than we did in the rural areas. And I think you'll see this playing out across the country as well. Akin to this is also paying overtime pay for overtime work. Something that, again, back in the 80s, we stopped raising the threshold any longer for paying overtime pay for overtime work. So the global economy that we're all a part of has a lot of forces beyond our control. But there are some things that are within our control. And one of those things is making sure that when people work hard and play by the rules, they don't have to raise their children in poverty. And doing the right thing there also has proven out over time to be good for our economy and good for economic growth. These are the things we did in my state, Kike. And if you look at all of the things we did to include people more fully in our economy, things like expanding family leave, raising our minority and women business participation goal, raising the minimum wage, passing a living wage. There are some of the high druids of trickle-down economics who would have predicted that would turn us into an economic basket case. But instead, we created a higher rate of job growth than our neighbors in Virginia or Pennsylvania coming out of the recession. We maintained the highest median income in America all the way through the recession, kept a AAA bond rating, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who hardly ever says anything nice about Democrats on the mainland, named our state #1 for innovation and entrepreneurship. And oh, by the way, because we did more rather than less, we made college more affordable. And we, going 4 years in a row without a penny's increase to college tuition. And for the first time ever, but in the middle of a recession, our state's public school systems, K to 12, were named #1 in America for 5 years in a row. So progress is a choice. Whether you create jobs or not is a choice. Whether you create an economy that works for all of us is a choice. Whether you pay people a decent wage for a hard day's work is a choice. And as Americans, I think we've proven over time that we had the ability to make the choices that allow all of us to move forward together. And we need to do it again.
On November 2012, there was a plebiscite here in Puerto Rico, and 54% of the people voted against our current relationship with the United States, against the Estado Libre Asociado or the Commonwealth, that they would prefer something different than what we have. How would you tackle that vote, 54% of the people, if you were President of the United States?
I would be guided by the desires of the people of Puerto Rico. And I was not here for the plebiscite and the campaign, but it would seem to me from a mainland view that there's 3 options. One is statehood, the other is independence, and the third one is an improved Commonwealth relationship. What's clear is that people aren't satisfied with the fact that they don't have the same protection under Chapter 9 bankruptcy, and they're right not to be satisfied with that. That people here pay the same amount in taxes but get less of a return, 70% less of a return in Medicaid, 40% less on Medicare than people on the mainland, that's not fair. So I think what the plebiscite has shown is that the relationship is unfair, that there is an injustice being meted out towards the people of Puerto Rico, and it is being highlighted right now in this debt crisis. And we have the ability as Americans to do better and to do right. And I believe it involves the bankruptcy, giving Puerto Rico the Chapter 9 coverage, and also treating people fairly in the reimbursement rates on Medicaid and Medicare. This is an unjust relationship right now, and I think that to say anything other than that is to speak contrary to fact.
While Mayor of Baltimore, you went very heavy against crime. As we see today in some of the cities around the United States, crime has been coming back. As President of the United States, how would you go about that specific area?
Yeah, great question. Look, we could talk about this for hours. There are very few issues I have dealt with on a daily basis as an executive and as a city councilman representing a majority African American district in a majority African American city, is the intertwined issues of violence, public safety, law enforcement, and race. Over the course of these last 15 years, though, I think we have discovered what works, and we've also discovered what does not work. And so my public policy approach is to do more of the things that work, to save lives and redeem lives, and to stop doing the things that don't work. Among those that do work, and we did them in Baltimore, improving policing with the sort of goal-oriented community policing that many big cities have adopted now, putting the crimes on the map, deploying your police officers where they can save the most lives, doing it in a repeated way. It was partly that approach, I believe, that allowed your governor to reduce homicides by 42%. I think the largest reduction in America in any state has to be, or in any territory, over the last 4 years. But drug treatment also works. A lot of times you have the debates about either better enforcement or more drug treatment. The truth is you have to do both. That's what we did in Baltimore. Re-entry programs for people when they're coming out of prison to make sure that they have a place to go.
Re-entry into the society.
Re-entry back into society. So even during the recession, rather than cut, we increased our training and our jobs programs inside our prisons. We ramped up the mediation programs that allow inmates to kind of apologize, reunite with, gain the forgiveness of those who they will be going back home to when they come out of prison in another 6 months. All of those sorts of adjustments actually worked, allowed us to reduce our recidivism rate by 15%. I believe it was the largest in the country among the states. Allowed us to cut our incarcerated population by 20%. And I laid out at the Urban League in Florida just a couple days ago a new agenda for criminal justice in the United States. And as part of that, I called not only for these things, but clearer reporting, regular reporting of all police departments of their discourtesy, excessive force, police-involved shootings, because we can't improve what we cannot see. And we can only know whether the things we're doing are working if we can measure it over time to see if what we're doing is working. Also called for an elimination of disparities in federal sentencing, like the huge disparity between federal sentences for possession of crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. I have no idea why that makes any sense. I don't know anyone in law enforcement who believes it does. As governor, I repealed the possession of small amounts of marijuana as a criminal violation, and yet we were still able to achieve 30-year reductions in violent crime. So those are some of the things we need to work on. I mean, there is no peace, no justice, no peace. Public safety is the foundation of a civilized society, but so too is an economy that works for all of us. We can't expect to, if we create the conditions that worsen extreme poverty, then we should not be surprised that violent crime comes back or that cities erupt.
Governor, thank you very much for being
Thank you,
here
Kike.
in Análisis 630, and I hope to see you when the campaign picks up for the primary back in Puerto Rico.
I would love to come back to Puerto Rico. I love your island.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Queridas amigas, amigos, ahí ustedes escucharon al ex gobernador